Hello, my cookies. Welcome to Russell Cooks. Thanks for joining me. Today, I'm going to be doing the simplest meatballs imaginable. Now, I'm going to add in a couple extra steps that you can take out, and I'm going to highlight the spots where you can gussy it up a little bit and get a little bit more extra flavor. You can make a meatball sub out of this. You can put it on pasta. You can do whatever you want. First things first, let's gather our ingredients. Some crushed tomatoes, some garlic, a shallot, some olive oil, also some salt. This is going to be our sauce. Dead simple. You don't even need these. If you want to skip this step, you can. For the meatballs, you're going to need a pound of ground beef, Parmigiano Reggiano, oregano, garlic powder, panko, and milk. That's it. This is super pantry friendly. I said Parmigiano Reggiano. This is not Parmesan. This is pecorino. First things first, for the sauce, I'm just going to mince up the shallot, the garlic. I'm going to saute it in a little bit of olive oil on the stove, dump my crushed tomatoes in, and I'm going to leave it. Then I'm going to focus on the meatballs, get those in. I'm going to cook the meatballs in the tomato sauce, and voila. And that's why I said if you want to omit the garlic and the shallot, that's fine. You don't need it in the sauce. I like the flavor it adds, but you can save yourself the time if you want. Gonna use good old Mr. Damascus. Here we go. Do the whole thing here. I'm gonna do 2 garlic cloves here. Do however many you want. Mince them up. Put them in a garlic mincer if you want. Chop them by hand. I'm gonna start my pot actually cold, and I'm gonna put about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in here. 1, 2. And I'm going to put my shallot and garlic in at the same time, and it's cold. And by cold, I mean it's just not hot. And do about medium heat, the shallot, the garlic. I want to get it aromatic. I don't want it to burn. This might take upwards of 3 minutes, medium heat. All right, so I got my garlic and shallot going. It's starting to sizzle. I turn the heat off. Got a little bit of toastiness. That's fine. I'm going to dump my crushed tomatoes in. It's essentially going to pause cooking. I'm going to sprinkle with about a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now we're going to let that sit. We're going to switch over. We're going to focus on our meatballs. For these meatballs, I'm using panko because I love panko. Super versatile. You don't have to wait for stale bread, any of that jazz. So I'm doing about a 1/2 cup of panko here, and I'm going to do a 1/2 cup of milk. All right, mix it around a bit, kind of let that sit while you get the rest of the stuff going here. I'm going to put in about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to do a 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano here and a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. Oh, when your teaspoon can fit into the jar, oh, that's a good day. All right, 1/2 teaspoon oregano. I like it a little garlicky here. Maybe I'll do 3/4 of a teaspoon garlic powder. Now for the pecorino or Parmesan's a little bit more potent, so maybe go with a 1/2 cup, maybe a 1/4 if you're getting the pre-grated stuff from the store. This is pecorino, so I'm gonna go a little bit higher. I'm gonna go maybe 2/3 a cup. Get it in over here. Mixing that up. What this is gonna do, gonna help create moisture kind of in the center so we don't have dried out meatballs. No one wants dried out meatballs. Pecorino is going to add a little bit of fat in there because a lot of the beef fat is going to render out. That's fine. That happens. I got 1 pound, 85% lean beef. You can absolutely use 80% here. Just going to massage this together. You want it fully mixed, the least amount of mixing possible. So I'm just going to kind of break up this meat, folding it over itself here. Oh yeah, I can smell that garlic powder, that oregano. I don't like putting fresh garlic in meatballs because it can sometimes taste really raw. All right, starting to get a little sticky. That's from the beef being overworked. And that's gonna toughen things up. So I am gonna stop right here. I'm gonna try and split this up. I'm gonna make 12 different meatballs out of this. They're going to be about 3 tablespoons in size each. And it's okay if they're a little different, but you want them pretty close. Yeah, no Michelin stars here. Do your best. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I got 12. We got them. This is one of the steps you can omit. I am going to sear up a few of these meatballs. I'm going to cook the rest all together. Then we're going to do a side-by-side tasting to see whether searing them up is actually worth it. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in here. So I got about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil in this pan. I'm heating it up over medium-high heat. and I'm going to brown 4 of these meatballs. Hopefully I'll do it in 2 to 4 minutes. I'm going to be rotating them through. If you need to increase your heat, increase your heat. This is normally for pasta and spaghetti, but it's good for kind of cupping and rotating. All right, so it's been about a minute. You can already tell they're starting to brown. Oh yeah, we're getting good brown here. Turn my heat down a little bit. I'm just gonna brown them as best I can. Perfect. All right, got good browning over most of the surface. We're up to the hands-off part here. Remember, I got my tomato sauce here. Gonna add my brown meatballs. I'm gonna nestle them in this tomato sauce. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna nestle the rest of them in as well. Bring it up to a simmer, medium-high heat. As soon as it hits a simmer, cover them, reduce heat to low, and cook for 18 to 22 minutes. You're gonna wanna flip them and rotate them halfway through. 15 to 25 minutes is a huge range, but depending on the size, if you get 12 out of them, it should be about 20 minutes. If you only make 8, it might take a little bit longer. If you don't wanna do it on the stovetop, you can absolutely just cover these, put them in the oven. It's gonna take 45 to 60 minutes though. We're getting up to a simmer. Gonna drop the heat down to low. And I'm gonna cover. Let's see how these guys are doing. Gonna rotate them around. Oh yeah, we got some bubbling. Here we go. Oh yes, saucy goodness. Yeah, we're getting there. We're at around 135. I want to bring these up to about 155. Ground beef, FDA, that's the temp they say. I'm so impatient. I'm such an impatient cook. Instead of Russell Cooks, just be impatient cook. Move faster. We are good. Here we go. A little bit under on that one. I think we will come up to temp as they sit. It's time for my favorite part. We all know what that is too. Look at this. Look at the sauciness too. You see how it clings? See how it's still on the meatball? It's not running off. Side by side. Let me get a taste of this sauce. Look at this. This is perfect. This would be great for pasta. Really soak it up, that starchy pasta. And you can tell that it is a little bit more liquidy, but that's fine. That's a lot of those meat juices and meat fat that rendered out here. That's good. I get a lot of that richness from those 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then there's just a ton of depth. It's not garlicky. It's not shalloty or oniony. It's got depth to it. It kind of holds its own. And that's exactly why I added the shallot and garlic. If you want to omit those, you can. Now let's do, if you get a little bit of red in the middle, keep in mind, like I can't even touch it. It's so hot. A lot of times meat is packed and they use nitrogen or other gases to keep it bright pink. Now this was an issue when we were doing meatballs and it was pink in the middle. And we're like, oh my gosh, they're raw. Am I not temping it correctly? No, it's actually just leftover bright pinkness from the way it was packaged. So I'm not worried about that. I temp it out. I trust my instruments. All right. Tender, beefy. This is juicy. It's very moist in the center. I love that. You get the richness from the beef. Really pairs well with that tomato sauce, which has turned savory, but it's still got a little bit of that acidic kick to it. It's got a little chew. It's got texture, but it's still tender. This is exactly what I want. Not overcooked, not overmixed. I'd say that just based off of that, you don't need to brown it. But let's try the brown one just to see. All right, the browned one. It's delicious. I gotta say, I do get a little teeny bit on the back end. You can taste some of that browning, but for the most part, I really don't think you need to brown them. I think you can skip that step altogether. This is revolutionary. I gotta say, even this one's a little bit more tender. Maybe these overcooked a little bit because they're in at the same time. This has more of a toughness on the exterior. This is just tender. In and out. The conclusion that I came to is I like not browning them. It's an extra step. It's an extra pan. It dirties my stove. I don't need that. I can just drop them in to my crushed tomato sauce, cook them until they're done, and they're perfectly tender and they're perfectly flavorful. It's exactly what I wanted. Thanks so much for joining. I'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.